Over the last few days, some residents across the country have been complaining about the lack of electricity, but an increase beyond what they've been accustomed to over the last few months. ZESCO is explaining why this has happened, and that's the reason why today I sat down with the spokesperson of the utility ZESCO, Matongo Maumbi, explaining why this is happening and how they're navigating it. Welcome to this day. My name is Dinyendawa Jonah Buyoya. Mr. Maumbi, thank you so much for joining us on this edition of This Day. Residents, as you are aware, have raised concern over the irregular power cuts the last few days and the extended hours of load shedding. Would you tell us why this is happening?
Greetings to you. So basically, what is going on now is something that partly anticipated and partly did not anticipate what could be going on. So on the anticipated part, we've known that Mamba Collieries would be doing annual maintenance where about 150 megawatts will not be available from Tuesday, 27th, up to the 10th, then again from the 16th of September up to the end of the month. The unexpected part has been on, we are banking on imports. Unfortunately, in the last couple of days, the route that brings imports into Zambia on the Namibian side has got a technical problem. So that has actually caused this power deficit to go much higher than it would normally be, because the backup that we had put on Mamba being down for this period is that we would continue getting imports and increase the imports, but unfortunately, the line from the Namibian side, they are not able to pass through that power that we are getting into Zambia. So there's very limited power that is going on. So as of yesterday, we were informed that an expert to do with the machine that is down, the converter, was actually flew into Namibia to work on that machine. And so today we are just awaiting to hear from them in terms of the updated report, but we are continuously and actively engaged with them so that we sort this problem as soon as possible, so that we can be able to restore power to the normalcy under the circumstances. So in a nutshell, that is what is going on in terms of the deficit. So leading to that, if not the whole country, let me just say the whole country, because the imports actually do spread around into the whole country, are actually affected with this. That has led to people actually experiencing much more extended hours of power rationing, where at the moment, people are getting as little as 2 hours a day or up to 4 hours a day to be able to do a few things here and there. But in this possible, the critical areas like hospitals and a few other places where those can remain on a lifeline kind of support.
How much power are you generating at the moment as ZESCO?
The current figures are standing around, for August, the current figures are around just above 1,000 megawatts, about 1,086 megawatts, according to the stats that we got earlier in the week. So that's how much we're generating across the country. So about 1,000, almost 1,100 megawatts. It is inclusive of the independent power producers.
With all of this going on and all these things happening, what is your fallback plan as ZESCO to ensure that power supply is stabilized and that the schedule, is predictable for the majority of the population?
Currently, from the generation that we have, the generation is very limited, and the backup to that limited generation has been the imported power. Now, with this constraint that we are having also on the imported power, The other plan that we have had is the installation of diesel gensets in a critical institutions, critical areas. Now, these are only coming live maybe they will be connected to these various institutions across the country, so that we can be able now to isolate as many places as possible and only leave the critical supply to the critical installations. Because as you know, the current system that we have in Zambia, in terms of the grid that we have in Zambia, is not fully designed for this kind of power rationing, because you'll find a place that is exempted from being a power rationed or load shed is connected to a number of other places where you cannot easily turn off that area, because you end up turning off the particular place that you're supposed to exempt. So the other action that we are doing is trying to move as fast as we can in terms of isolating these critical loads from the rest of those that will not be considered as critical in the situation that we are in. Also, what is on the table is also discussing with the industry players to see how much we can reduce further in terms of power rationing them, because now the situation is more critical, and we need to reduce supply to as many places as possible, so that the critical areas, especially those that offer critical services, would remain in place. But we are hopeful now that the technicians, the experts are actually on the ground. We're hopeful that in the soonest possible time, we hope that by the end of the day, we'll get an indication of how long it may take expected. So at this situation, the power is actually being bought already. What the problem is having it transmitted through Namibia, that will have a headway, will have a better way forward. I think by the end of the day, we'll understand the situation, and then we'll be able to communicate to the public in terms of where the situation stands. So the other backup that we have is employing self-energy efficiency practices in homes, so that little time that we get to supply power, people also, whether it be an industry, whether it be an individual, we get to be conservative with the use of electricity, so that we don't drain too much of the little that has been made much more little of what we have. Because at the end of the day, we may be able to supply this little power or this much power, but then if we continue business as usual, where we increase the production, we increase the use unnecessarily, then it will mean that that little power that we have will diminish faster. So that call is going out to industry players. We are in discussion with the various stakeholders to ensure and also have just an agreed kind of framework where we can see how much more we can reduce, especially with the industries. We know that in residential clients, we are residential customers, we're actually giving up to 2 to 4 hours at different intervals, because they can be switched on at the same time. Because so these different measures that we are putting around, we hope that they can sustain us until we have stability coming from the imports with this current problem that we have on the Namibian route.
With all this being said already, with the import of electricity, I also want to find out what your position is at the moment on power exports.
So in terms of power exports, they have been reduced to a minimum, and there are currently discussions on possible further clawback, possibly even having a suspension to some areas where we may need to actually fully suspend. So those discussions are ongoing, because they are quite heavy in terms of contracts and things like that. So once the discussions have come to fruition, then we may be able to give a concrete update in terms of how much further we may be able to claw back or even suspend at this particular moment, especially looking at what we have right now. So those negotiations are ongoing, and we can be able to update as we go on. So that's a stand on that. So the discussions on the current situation are aiming at seeing if we can either suspend the export completely or reduce the quantums. So it just depends on what the contracts will allow, because there are a lot of other obligations that are bound. But at the moment, they are receiving just lifeline support. An example I can give is in the border towns, where we completely stop giving power, say, to a town that is bordering with Zambia. If so, what will be the ripple effect of that if the border towns are completely shut down? So those are some of the discussions that are going on in terms of the quantums that we are giving out in consideration of other sectors like cross-border trading that would greatly get affected if everything were to stop being exported, even in the smaller quantities, but adding them up, they make quite some quantum. But then you are looking also at the side of disturbing or destabilizing the cross-border trade, which in itself can be another disaster. So those discussions are ongoing, and once we have a proper conclusion, we may be able to give an update accordingly.
How much electricity is ZESCO exporting right now?
At the moment, the quantums are around 200 megawatts collectively. Just above 200 megawatts collectively across the nations and the businesses that we are exporting to.
So then, do you ration power to these countries that you're exporting electricity to, given your present circumstances? Are you doing the same to them as you are the Zambian market?
That's the discussion that is going on. The quantums are already reduced, so that's already a cut in terms of what is going on. But it's a common practice within countries. Even when we are receiving, we may receive power maybe for a few hours and then not receive power for a few hours. Same as when we are sending out, we can send power for a few hours and only give them power at certain times of the day. So that is actually a common practice that is happening within the region. But what we are looking at now is, even as we supply that power, in what quantums can we now possibly afford or not afford to supply? So those are the discussions that are going on. But otherwise, that rationing is already happening, and it's a common practice around the sub-region, where you get power at certain intervals and not get power at certain intervals. Sometimes you get power to the quantums that you need. Sometimes you get quantums that you did not request for, in terms of maybe they are reduced. So they call you in the morning to say, the order that you made for this much of power, we cannot give you, only give you this less much of power. And then you have to institute emergency measures as and when that happens. So that happens almost at a daily basis, and the trading goes on like that throughout the region.
Would you kindly clarify where ZESCO is importing electricity from at the moment?
Largely, without going into great detail specifics, we are largely importing from Mozambique and South Africa. So those are the places that we're importing much from. So the power that we get from Mozambique has to pass through South Africa, to Namibia, to Zambia. And even the South African one has to pass through Namibia, to Zimbabwe, maybe to Zambia. So the line in Namibia is what has a problem. And then that power, we are not able to get it into Zambia in the quantums that are required. So largely, we do import from Mozambique and South Africa.
The water levels at Lake Kariba have continued to recede, and there is a risk of shutting down the Kariba North Bank Power Station by mid-September, is what we've realized. Would you give us the details of this and what it means?
So currently, the water levels are dwindling because generation is still going on. And with the current situation that we are in, it gives it that the Kariba is actually generating a bit more than what it should generate, because we're trying to meet some level of demand that is coming from the critical installations and just the basic supply to the various customers. So what this simply means is that when that time comes, the deficit of power what we in the country will actually be larger than what we have now. If, for example, we don't have this import constraint that we currently have, that's where we had, say, indicated that we would increase the hours of power rationing to 17 hours. But when we are compounded with such constraints, then it means that that 17 hours cannot be a discussion for now, because already with the current situation, we are not able to provide that much power to the country. But so with what we have now, talking about power rationing up to 17 hours, it's a discussion that may not be here, because now we are looking at how much more power can we supply with this little that we have. This situation has actually greatly affected the whole country. Lusaka Core Belt feel a bigger pinch, because I think the population is much larger in this area. And then, so we are looking at how we can work around providing enough power for us to do the basics at rotational basis around the country, say providing power for 2 to 4 hours, so that we can do a few chores, restock water, pump water, and do a few things. So that is something that we are actually trying to work around. You may have noticed that from Monday, we've just been receiving power for 2 to 3 hours, 2, 3, 4 hours, sometimes 1 hour, depending on the stability of the grid and the demand and the supply at the same time. So once we stabilize in terms of we have an increment in terms of the power that we have in the country, then it means that we can try to manage the demand much better, and then we can look at now talking the increased hours of supply. But for now, our priority is to look at the critical installations that they get to be supplied, and then we ensure that we do get to give supply for about 2 or so hours, 2 to 4 hours in a day for people, so that we can manage this water that we have. So once the import situation is normalized, then we can restart the discussion and look at how now we can move forward with the power rationing. But besides that, I had spoken earlier about diesel generators. So the diesel generators are also coming in. Some have actually landed in the country, and they're just getting to be installed in various places. So we are trying also, instead of the critical institutions just relying solely on ZESCO power, we also want to hope to give backup power in terms of generators. And in some places, we'll be putting up solar solutions so that they can have alternative backup, so that when we have a situation where we have to power ration, those institutions can run on backup power, and we can be able to switch off a lot of areas that may not have critical services at that particular time, so that we can have as many critical installations as possible that are on supply at any particular time.
So if I'm getting you right, we should expect higher hours of load shedding beyond the 17 hours of load shedding that you had initially communicated would be the case, and a situation you said would be the last time you're increasing load shedding hours.
That is a great possibility, especially looking at the constraints that we've had on the import line. It means even the generation that is happening elsewhere has had to be increased a bit, meaning that eating up much more water faster than we anticipated. And then, so the discussion that will be there, the communication that will be there, once we have all the facts present, especially when we hear from our Namibian counterparts, we'll be looking at how do we supply power to safely supply power. So the discussion on the 17 hours is on hold for now, but looking at how much power we can supply as we service the critical areas first, and then look at the rest of the community. How do we provide power to those communities? So that possibility is there, that the 17 hours one will not hold for now as we navigate through this current problem over a problem.
Should people anticipate a shutdown by ZESCO?
No, currently we are not yet at that level of a shutdown, because we still have some power that is going around, and we still are receiving something. So for now, yes, we'll have reduced hours of supply, but in terms of shutdown, we just have to take precaution in terms of usage of power, so that we maintain the supply that we have and be able to prolong this situation that we have. But a shutdown for now, not yet. Not yet. We haven't reached that level where we say now we completely shut down. Because when you say shut down, it means we cannot even provide any semblance of power to anyone. So that is what the shutdown would look like. But at the moment, no, that is not there. We still have power, and the priority when we reach critical stages will be the essential services that we have in the country. And hopefully by then, a number of places will be supplied by diesel generators. So September is the month where we have a lot of issues culminating at the same time, where we have Mamba doing their maintenance, we are losing power. Kariba Dam, most likely than not, will also shut down because of greatly reduced water levels. And now we have this import challenge that we have. So all things are culminating around the same time. But this, like the Namibian constraint, is a temporary one, which should be sorted out very soon. And the Mamba corridors will also be done in the month of September. And then all the activities that we are doing should at least get back to the way we anticipate them to be. And in terms of a full shutdown, no, that is not something we are anticipating. Not yet, no.
Is there consideration by yourselves on increasing imports?
That consideration is there. The challenge that we have is the route in terms of getting that power into the country. So that consideration has already been put in effect, but with the challenge that is going on now, we are limited with the power that we can get in. But we hope that once the line is rectified, then we can even get the power that we did not get initially, and actually that will be a boost in terms of the energy that we'll receive. So that's where we had even applied for emergency tariff, which was not approved, but with a call for us to re-engage different stakeholders so that we can find more resources to increase the amount of power that we are importing in the country, because the possibility is there. And once we have enough funds, then it means we can also be able to increase on the amount of power that we get to import from our neighboring countries that have surplus that they can sell to us.
Kindly tell us, how much electricity are we importing at the moment, and what's next? You know, with the receding water levels at Lake Kariba, what's next?
Start with your last part of the question. In terms of the actual expenditure, I may not have the right the figures as at now, but what I know for sure is that the imports based versus what we are using as a country, the import price is 2-3 times higher than the consumption price that we have as a country. And in terms of the application that was not approved by the ERB, I think the core, even by the regulator, was that the application itself was done in good faith, but for other reasons that they gave is that they could not approve it, and that we need to engage other sources of getting that income. So discussions are ongoing with the ZESCO, the regulator, and the government and other stakeholders in terms of looking at how we can source that fund and ensure that we get to import at least that extra 300 megawatts of power that we need, so that we can move the country ahead with a plan that we had to say we can be providing this much power per day and be able to navigate through this up to the next rain season.
How soon can people see an improvement? If you talk about the meteorological department and you talk about the normal rainfall as a possibility, if this does in fact happen, when can people expect to see an improvement?
So just yesterday, different players in the water sector were actually assembling in Harare, Zimbabwe, where they were looking at the water situation or the rainfall situation in the SADC region for the next rain season. So what they came out with is that most part of Southern Africa, especially the central region of Southern Africa, will have normal to above normal rainfall. And then when we do get to have that, then it means that we'll continue, or at least we'll restart normal generation of power through our hydro power plants. But regardless of that, as a corporation, a number of initiatives, alternative sources of power, especially solar, will start coming online next year. The first one maybe in the first quarter of 2025, where we've put up solar plants across the country. And the first one that I'm talking about is the one in Chisamba, where we're putting up 100 megawatt plant that should be online by the first quarter of 2025. And a number of other places were in Shangombo, Kasupe, Serenje, and a couple of other areas, the solar plants are also being done. Besides that, you may be aware that government actually did create a policy and a law in terms of net metering, in terms of mini grids, and open source in the electricity industry. So with mini grids, this is basically looking at you and I, or any investor that can put up a generation plant of up to 5 megawatts and then be able to sell that power through ZESCO. So those will be dotted across the country. ZESCO actually did call for applications for 60 locations across the country to put up 5 megawatt plants of solar power. And at the moment, the procurement process, I think, should be completed, and then the sites being identified, and the closure on those, and then works being started. So that is looking at adding an additional 300 megawatts just from that one project. And we have a number of independent power producers that have signed the power purchase agreements with the corporation, where they are also putting different solar projects. But for those, we await their financial closure, and then they get to find the monies that they need to finalize the projects, and they get to put online. So in the near future, will not be so heavily dependent on hydro. Currently, we're depending on hydro so much to an extent that 86% of the energy that we have as a country is coming from hydro. And we are working on reducing this percentage so that we are not heavily reliant on hydro. Hydro is good when you have water, but in a situation like we've just had, it has shown us that it is as dangerous as it is good, because we are not control of nature. And you may have a bad rain season or a good rain season at any time. So when these come on board, starting 2025 going forward, then we will have a good base in terms of electricity. Also, the projects that we have of connecting Zambia to Tanzania to Kenya, there's the Zambia, Tanzania, Kenya Intercontinental, the ZTK, which at the moment is in Serenje, and it is being fast-tracked to ensure that in the soonest possible time, we can cover the 613-kilometer stretch into Nakonde and Tunduma to link up with the Tanzanian line, so that we can be able to trade power between the Southern Africa power pool and the East Africa power pool with that interconnector, and also working on other interconnectors so that we can have multiple sources of sourcing power from our different neighbors who have excess. Because as you know, Tanzania actually have excess power, and because we don't have an interconnector between the two countries or the two regions, we are not able to utilize that opportunity of excess power from East Africa. So once that also comes online, then the portfolio will sit much better in terms of being more secure and being less reliant on hydro. Ultimately, hydro is good, but we are taking precautions to ensure that we do not find ourselves in such a situation where that dependence on hydro leads us to the situation that we are currently in.
Based on the present circumstances of what's happening, I understand that you do have a meteorological department. So I'd like to find out what the future looks like this rainy season. Based on your planning, What does this rainy season look like in terms of power generation?
So if we do get to have rains, normally rains in Zambia, I grew up knowing that rains start around independence, that is around October, end of October. So if we do get to start receiving rains by end of October and November, I think by the end of the year, by December, enough waters would have accumulated in the reservoirs to make us increase the generation. So if all goes well and is as anticipated, then by December, mid to end December, we should have an improved portfolio in terms of power supply, power generation, which should also lead to more hours of supply as opposed to more hours of being off supply. And by January, February, definitely we should be able to be back to normal kind of generation, because we stand at a good generation capacity of 3,700 with a demand of 2,400. So once we have good waters, it means we shall be able to easily meet our demand, because the capacity that we have is far above the demand that the country actually calls for at the moment. So end December into January, we should be able to improve the situation, because by then the flows in the rivers from up north coming down south and in other areas would have actually improved, because it takes a couple of weeks and sometimes months for waters to flow and to accumulate to levels that can be significantly impactful in terms of changing the situation that we have.
Let's talk about the net metering that you've just highlighted. What has the response been to net metering?
Correct. So the response has been, it's the first time that we're doing it in Zambia. So there's quite some skepticism in some corners of the country. But in terms of people actually coming to the office, inquiring more about net metering, the response is quite encouraging, because people are getting to get more information on this. And then online, they are signing up to prepare to actually make the final application to be connected. As you know, net metering, first of all, you have to be a ZESCO customer, because you have to get power to ZESCO and get power from ZESCO. So you need to be a ZESCO customer as a priority, and then you get the right tools and equipment that are needed. And we've listed quite a lot of equipment on our website to ensure that we guide the prospective prosumers, that is the people that are producing and consuming electricity. So we are continuously doing public engagements, public awareness information, and people are coming on board in terms of actually making the sign up and to move to the next stage of applying for net metering, because at least for now, all the fees that are applicable were approved by the Energy Regulation Board, and now we are set to go. And once people are ready and are willing, so we have some test centers here and there just to see how it works and have an analysis of the data. I think at the end of the month, when we can compare the information that we have, that offer a better analysis and give also information on how this works. So once that does, and people should also know that as they do their solar installations, and if they want to do net metering, it's not every converter that would work for net metering. They have to get a grid-tied inverter from the go, so that at the time they decide to do net metering, they would already have the right inverter for a start. That grid-tied inverter, it means it's an inverter that can be able to communicate with the grid in the right way, that the electricity that is demanded for can go in a safe and quality manner that is required. So this is something that is relatively new to us, to the community, and the response for now, I would say, is encouraging, because people are actually uptaking more and more information to ensure that as they connect, they are able to they already have the rightful information. And one thing that we'll note about net metering is that you are netting off the units. So for now, we are not starting with giving out cash. So you are netting out the units. So what you use in your homestead, in your business, is recorded because you'll be given a smart meter. The current meter that you have will be replaced with a smart meter. So the smart meter will calculate your needs first, and then supply power to the needs of your household. And the excess that you don't need in your household is what will be sent to ZESCO, exported to ZESCO. And when you need your power back, instead of using cash to buy power, you import power back from ZESCO, and then you just net off the units that you have sent to ZESCO, and then be able to save on the actual cash that you should have used to buy electricity on. So we hope that by the end of the month, we'll check with our ICT team, and be able to give the correct position in terms of statistics of those that have signed up, of those that have applied, and those that have been connected. And then we see how they progress, and then we hope that one who connects will be able to encourage another one, and then we'll have a solar revolution that is coming, and then would reduce the demand that we have, or the strain that we have on the national grid, and be able to supply the power to critical services in the community.
Finally, is it true that the purchase of inverters and batteries has increased your demand as ZESCO?
It does, because look, for example, Jonah, if you have your house and then you've put up an inverter, you've put up a backup system, but then you don't put up solar, it simply means that when ZESCO power comes back, you are using your power for normal supply, and you're using the same power to store power in the battery. So that is what is increasing the demand from the users. So what we are urging the community, those that have bought batteries and inverters, is that please let the batteries be charged with solar, so that you save the purpose of this power rationing. Because if we are doing power rationing and you are doubling your consumption, it's at the end of the day, it will be zero. Because if normally I use 500 units of electricity per month, and then during this period of power rationing, I still use 500 units of power, that means I'm not helping in terms of power rationing, because you've been off for 12 hours, you've been off for 15 hours, but your usage of units has remained the same. What we expect is that if we have been off for 12 hours, 12 hours is half of the day. 500, we take half, then we expect that you consume about 250 units as well, because the idea of power rationing is that we reduce the consumption, because the supply that we have cannot meet the demand that is called for by the consumers out there, the customers out there. So we urge the people that as you get your alternative sources of power, please ensure that the recharging of the different gadgets that you've put up is also having an alternative in terms of solar panels, so that the strain on the grid is reduced. Because you have 1,000 people that have got inverters and batteries, but none of them has got solar. So it means that that consumption will double. What we need is that let's put up solar, so that the batteries can get the recharging from the solar plants, the solar panels, and then the strain on the national grid, the demand on the national grid would actually reduce. And in the process, in the near future, they can apply for net metering, and then they don't get to use as much money as they need, and then they can recover the costs that they may have incurred in terms of installing that solar solution that they have.
Matongo Maumbi, thank you so much for talking to me on this day.
Thank you very much, Jonah.